After experiencing its most severe heat wave in decades, Greece, along with other Mediterranean countries like Turkey, Italy, Algeria, and Spain, has been in the midst of a wave of destructive and deadly wildfires that have rocked the country, displacing thousands of residents and scorching the landscape. While a combination of rain and firefighting efforts helped bring the fires under control last week, new winds have kicked up this week, prompting new evacuation warnings in Greece. Scientists have said there's little doubt that the scope, severity, and regularity of these devastating wildfires are linked to man-made climate change. To talk about all of this with me today, I'm joined by Theodota Nantsou, who is speaking to us from Athens. Since 2005, Theodota has been the head of the Environmental Policy Department at the Worldwide Fund for Nature, where she is also the chair of the WWF European Policy Office Strategic Team. Formerly the World Wildlife Fund, the WWF is a global network of people, scientists, volunteers, and citizens whose mission is to, quote, stop the degradation of the natural environment, protect biodiversity, ensure the sustainable use of renewable natural resources, and promote the reduction of pollution and consumer waste. Theodota, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's good to be with you.
So, I wanted to kind of hop right in here, and I imagine that a lot of our viewers and listeners, are on the other side of the Atlantic right now. And, I imagine that it's difficult for many of them to truly grasp the scale of these historic wildfires. So I wanted to start by asking if you could give us, a sense of what that devastation has looked like and what Greece has endured over the past week.
That's difficult to describe. There's fear and there's anxiety about what is to come. We keep seeing summers and what we call the fire season coming earlier and ending later in the year than the years before. And we also see wildfires that, scorch millions of stremata, we say in Greek, hectares of forest lands. We see them becoming wilder and wilder and more easily getting out of control than what we knew. This summer, the fire season started very early. We had a very long heat wave. The first phase of the heat wave came in early May, and then there was cold. And then there was another week of very high temperatures in June. And then we had in July and beginning of August, we had the longest heat wave that I have experienced in my lifetime. That means we have very dry, forests. Okay, there's no humidity. So fires just get out of control in no time. And although climate change, the climate crisis as we call it, does not set forests on fire in itself, it fuels these fires and gets them out of control in no time. So what we have seen, even the people, living in Athens, the center of Athens was not set on fire, was not on fire in itself, but the forests around Athens burned. It was unbearable in Athens. In the capital of Greece, it was unbearable. Athens was covered in an orange cloud for many days. It was extremely hot for many, many, many days. It was unbearable. You couldn't breathe. So it's getting worse and worse. And this is sad.
I mean, it is really sad. And, I mentioned to you when we were kind of preparing for this interview that I grew up in Southern California. I'm a native Californian, which has a very Mediterranean climate. And in my lifetime, right, I've had to get used to watching more of my home state burn every year. And it breaks my heart anew every single year. So I can only imagine what you are feeling. And I wanted to kind of ask a little bit more about that. As we've mentioned, this is a major issue around the Mediterranean with fires in Italy, Turkey, warnings in Spain and France. And with climate change contributing to record heat waves and longer dry seasons, like you were describing, the region that you're living in has been labeled a climate change hotspot. So I wanted to ask if you could talk about what that actually means and what it feels like to live in a so-called climate change hotspot, and what the changes have looked like to you as someone who was born in Athens and has lived there, what that kind of change over the course of your lifetime has looked like.
You put it very well. The Mediterranean is a climate change hotspot. And actually, last week, the new report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UN top scientific body on climate change, was published, the 6th report. And it actually states that the Mediterranean is expected to be one of the most prominent and vulnerable climate change hotspots on Earth. And we see this happening. And, when this report was published, many countries in the Mediterranean were burning. Turkey, Greece, Italy, Tunisia. And we're talking about mega fires, as we call them. So there was this heat dome that covered the Mediterranean for many, many, many days, the longest heat wave we have known, and many fires all around, burning forests, homes, animals, protected areas even, biodiversity hotspots. So this is huge. We have been seeing this progressively becoming worse in our own lifetimes. So the first heat wave, the largest, say, warning was about 25 years ago. Athens reached 47 degrees Celsius, which was really bad. This year, we have the same temperatures, but for a longer time. So we see seasons not being the seasons that we knew. We see a different attitude in vegetation, insects, of course, heat and cold, and it's becoming difficult in the Mediterranean. And we also saw the climate crisis having dramatic impact on Germany. Who would expect that people would die in Germany in the flash floods that hit Belgium and Germany? That was really, really terrifying. And I think that this is going to signify changes in Europe's climate policies as well, which may be the good outcome of these tragic events.
So I definitely want to ask you about what that type of change would look like and why it's so desperately needed. But I guess before we get there, I wanted to ask if you could talk a little more about kind of what the human cost has looked like, especially over the past week. We've seen headlines about a lot of folks in Greece being displaced from their homes, a lot of property destruction. But we know that, climate change writ large is connected to a lot of other political crises, creating lots of climate refugees and so on and so forth. So I wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit about, what these fires have meant for, folks living in Greece and kind of what that human toll has looked like.
The good thing is that we do not have a huge human toll in human lives, because many of the villages were evacuated early. That is good and bad. Good because you don't get human victims, people burning. The bad thing is that many of these people know how to save villages and forests, because they are farmers, because they know how the forest behaves. So. But you never know. You can never tell what another scenario would result in. What we know is that wildfires are becoming wilder in Greece. All attention needs to be paid on precaution, prevention, early on. in the beginning of the year, that is clearing the forests, managing sustainably these forests, and of course, avoiding to let people live in forests the way, in this unplanned manner that we see in Greece. Sustainably managing forests is now a matter of life and death. Protecting nature, because this nature is the best shield that we have against the worst impacts of the climate crisis, is a matter of life and death. So we need to start seeing the way we treat nature in another, under another perspective, that of being, the best shield that we have against what is coming, and we know what is coming. So we expect the fires to become wilder when we see strong winds, and we have been lucky in Greece because the winds have not been that strong this summer. So what we saw, Attica burning outside of Athens, the forests outside of Athens burning in these uncontrolled fires, that was in very low winds, unlike previous wildfires. If the winds get stronger, I don't know what is to come, and I hope this doesn't happen this summer. This is like hell on Greece this summer. We didn't expect that. Of course, climate chaos tends to become the new normality. This is what we are seeing. So many people, many scientists are now talking about floods, flash floods that will follow up. Can you imagine what that will mean when you don't get the water retention that healthy forests provide? We don't know what to expect. So this is what the climate crisis means in Greece and in regions like the Mediterranean, like California, which has a Mediterranean climate type. We see these things happening in Siberia. Siberia is burning. Siberian forests are burning at temperatures of 40 degrees. I mean, this is what the climate crisis means. And if we reach the 1.5 degree global warming, then climate chaos tends to become the new normality. So it's unpredictable.
Right. I mean, I think that's really the headline, right? Is there's a great Greek term that we get from the ancient Greece about hubris, right? I mean, there's a hubris that comes with thinking that we will be able to fully contain, this kind of runaway climate change, and that's very much not.
Hubris, excuse me for interrupting.
Is that Latin?
Brings another Greek word, chaos. So,
right,
this is what
there we
see.
go. Right. And I think that one of the other kind of consequences of that, as you said, right, as you also are dealing with winds that are spreading fires. This is something that happens all the time in California. We have what are called the Santa Ana winds that spread embers to all the dry hills and spark new fires. And you then end up with a situation where you are struggling to keep up with firefighting efforts, when you have so many fires cropping up all over the place. And I think it's become kind of a horrifyingly well-known fact that in the US, when we run out of official firefighters to fight these fires, we rely on prisoners. And international cooperation is also another option that I would think is preferable to forcing prisoners to fight our fires for us. So I wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit about what the firefighting efforts in Greece have looked like, and if there is a kind of international coordination at all in helping fight these fires around the Mediterranean.
Thankfully, we don't, put prisoners on fire in Greece. Thankfully, also, Greece is a member of the European Union, so there is concerted action and there is an important solidarity coordination in, other countries that are not dealing with catastrophic fires at this moment, sharing firefighting forces with countries that are facing a crisis. So Greece has received important help from Romania, from Poland, from France and other countries in the means of claims and actual firefighters. You know, the firefighters are the new heroes every summer. And in Greece, we had one volunteer firefighter who tragically died in an accident in one of the major fires outside of Attica. So volunteering, I mean, trained volunteers, yes. I would not be allowed to go into a fire if I were not trained, but trained volunteers and very, very good firefighting volunteer groups, they are important in, you know, contributing to the firefighting effort. But I think that the big bet for Greece and Mediterranean countries, because of the type of forests that we have, you know, pine forests, the biggest bet is to manage these forests early on in the year. This is what Greece has not been doing in the recent decades. So you get a lot of biomass that simply burns, like, you know, in no time, and the whole forest is ablaze in minutes. So it is a matter of life and death to keep those forests alive and sustainable early on. And it's a lot cheaper and does not cost lives. So this is where Greece needs to invest on. And there are many other problems with illegal land uses and land use changes that do not allow the Greek state, the public administration, to plan and protect human lives and human settlements, simply because they crop up anywhere without any planning, and then you just need to service them, to protect them, to build infrastructures and all that. So this is a specific Greek characteristic that simply fuels and makes the situation worse.
Well, and I guess that kind of leads us into, you know, the final question, right, about what needs to be done. You know, you already mentioned that these fires in Greece really erupted the very same week that the latest and most alarming report came out from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC. And the fires really provided, I think, a shocking example of the horrors that we are currently facing and will continue to face if we don't radically alter our societies and address the root causes of climate change. So if we don't change, what will countries like Greece, you know, be looking forward to in the future? You kind of touched on this already, right? What happens if we cross that threshold? So I guess I just wanted to ask again, you know, what are we really looking at in the future if we don't make change, and what kinds of change do you think we need to be pushing for?
Effectively addressing the climate crisis. And, you know, the conference, the 26th conference that is happening in Glasgow in November this year, has to come up with really important decisions and, you know, break eggs and really stop this crisis. But addressing the impacts of the climate crisis on forest fires and flash floods, that requires a change of mentality. I think that the key question is, the key is prevention. So protect these natural ecosystems that provide human settlements and provide us with the best and most effective shield against the climate disasters that we see. That means coasts, water basins, you know, for the floods to be able to go out, forests, protect them and you know, clean them on time, change forest policy, stop seeing land as building blocks, building plots, start seeing land and natural ecosystems as shields, and of course address climate change. But this is longer term. What we need to do now is volunteer, participate, engage each one of us in addressing climate change and protecting human settlements and biodiversity, but also seeing nature in another way. as the best protection that we have in addressing the worst impacts of climate change on humanity.
Well, Theodota Nantsou is the head of the Environmental Policy Department at the Worldwide Fund for Nature. Theodota, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is Maximillian Alvarez for the Real News Network. Thank you all so much for watching. And before you go, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also, if you want to see more coverage like this, please go to therealnews.com/support and become a monthly sustainer of our work. Thank you so much for watching.